本書では肉体の健康と心の健康に加え、つながりの健康もまた重要であると書かれています。つながりの健康とは何でしょうか？
So social health is the dimension of our overall health and well-being that comes from connection. So if you think about your physical health as being about your body and your mental health as being about your mind, social health is about your relationships. And at this point, we have decades of research showing that our connections, our relationships, our sense of community are equally important for our overall health and our longevity as things like exercise and nutrition and getting a good night's sleep. So when we differentiate social health from physical and mental health, that's really giving connection the attention that it deserves and emphasizing that we need to strengthen our connections just like we strengthen our physical muscles.
So you write that the social health can prevent illness and extend the lifespan. Why is this?
That's right. So there's really incredible literature showing that when people feel meaningfully connected and have those supportive ties, they are at a lower risk for things like heart disease and stroke, diabetes, dementia, depression, and at the very extreme end of the spectrum, people who have those strong social ties actually live longer. And we can see this in Japanese communities like Okinawa, where people who really emphasize those strong social supportive systems actually have a longer longevity. And so some of the reasons for why this happens is that our relationships and our interactions trigger these biological and physiological processes in our bodies. So if you think about the flip side, loneliness and isolation, our bodies perceive that as a threat. It's something that stresses us out. And so if we're chronically isolated and lonely, our bodies are in this constant state of dealing with that stressor. It increases the inflammation in our bodies. It weakens our immune systems on an ongoing basis. On the other hand, when we have those supportive ties, it really buffers against stress. It helps us be more resilient. It releases things like dopamine and oxytocin into our bodies that then improve and support our health overall. There's also this practical side, right? So when you have supportive ties, they can help you to be healthy, right? So a great example of this was during the pandemic, when we saw in studies around the world that people who had strong community ties, those neighborhoods actually had fewer cases of COVID-19 and fewer deaths from COVID-19. That's because when we have those supportive ties in place, we can help each other. We can say, hey, did you know about this free vaccine clinic down the road? Or, hey, do you want help reading your medications and making sure you're taking them correctly? Do you want me to take you to the doctor? So in that very practical sense as well, we can really support each other to be healthy.
Is this more, the loneliness more happen in the city side or countryside?
This is a great question. So it happens in both. We see loneliness happen all over, but it may happen in different ways. You know, there's a sense of being in a really busy city like Tokyo where you're surrounded by so many people, but you're not necessarily connecting in meaningful ways, right? So there's very much this sense that we can be lonely while in a crowded place while surrounded by other people. So the social norms may be different in cities or in rural areas that then influence our social health in different ways. Absolutely. You know, I think it's very common for people to experience social anxiety and for people to be nervous about social interactions or to struggle with different social skills. This is something I hear from people around the world that many people struggle with. But it can still be really beneficial and helpful to push beyond that and to challenge yourself to learn those skills and to move beyond that. One thing I've found that's really interesting in the research is that people who are lonely might go into a social interaction having different thoughts and feelings than someone who's not lonely. So for example, you might feel more guarded, you might feel a little bit more nervous, you might interpret other people's body cues more negatively. And so you come away from that interaction thinking thoughts that are more negative, which actually inhibits you from connecting more meaningfully in the first place.
In this book, you use various data to explain that the people's relationship has become weaker than it used to be. So to what extent people starting to lose relationship?
Yeah, we're seeing around the world that there are some very concerning trends. And in fact, just recently, the World Health Organization formally declared social connection a public health priority for this reason. We see trends like many people around the world, hundreds of millions of people who don't feel like they have anyone they can reach out to for support. We have trends like fewer people belonging to community groups, fewer people engaging in their local neighborhoods, more people living alone. So there are a lot of trends like this that we're seeing that are worrisome to me as someone who understands the importance of connection for our overall health.
While reading this book, I got an impression that very like a competitive society and technology, those are like factors that make people feel lonely. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think the technology piece in particular is something that's very concerning to me and to other social scientists who study this topic. There is over-reliance now on using technology to connect, and it can be a wonderful, empowering tool to stay in touch, for sure. But when we supplement all of our in-person interactions, or when we substitute them just with technology, that becomes an issue. It's really important that we also have that in-person human connection. Studies are showing that there's something uniquely beneficial of being in person together with other people who know you, who care about you, who you can share experiences with. So I think technology, social media, and increasingly now AI is an area both for opportunity but also for concern. So I think we have a beautiful illustration of them right here on the cover of the book, which I love. So these 4 styles are meant to capture the different preferences and the different habits that we have for both the amount of interaction that's nourishing to us and the type of interaction that's nourishing to us. So you may have heard of being an introvert or an extrovert. So an introvert is someone who needs less interaction in general. An extrovert is someone who wants to be around people all the time. But there are also differences in the types of interaction that we enjoy. Some people are very comfortable in deep conversation, going beyond small talk, talking about their dreams and desires and their challenges that they're going through, and really want to go deep. And others are more comfortable, in more casual conversation and keeping it at that level and maybe taking longer to warm up and go more deeply. And so these 4 styles, the butterfly is someone who loves a lot of casual interaction. The wallflower is someone who loves a little bit of casual interaction. A firefly is someone who really thrives on a little bit of deep connection. And then the evergreen is someone who thrives on a lot of deep connection. And so these different personas were ones that I developed over the course of researching for this book and understanding that there are different ways that we like to connect with other people, and that's okay. One's not better than the other, they're just different. But by understanding our habits and our preferences, we can actually be more socially healthy.
I thought this is very unique category, and I never see anything like this before. How did you create these categories?
Yeah, so it was in the course of studying what the data says, but also talking to people. I interviewed so many people for this book, but also for the work that I do more broadly with organizations promoting and advancing social health. And I've gotten to speak with thousands of people around the world about their own social experiences. And I'm just fascinated by the fact that a lot of people maybe feel guilty if they're a little shyer or they need some alone time. And it might be surprising to know that I'm actually an introvert. So I fall on the firefly end of the spectrum. So that means that I need a little bit of I need a good amount of alone time. I need to balance how much socializing I do with how much solitude I have. But I love deeper connection. When I'm with my friends and family, I want to get straight into the heart of things, and it's really energizing for me to have those deeper conversations and then go have some alone time to balance that. And so I think really looking at the landscape of how we each are different in these ways, that helps me create this matrix and help people to understand their own styles.
So butterfly people, they are good to friend with butterfly people, or it's always good to have same category friends?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So the research shows that it's really beneficial to have diverse social ties. So what I mean by that is you have a variety of people who you interact with and have relationships with. Perhaps you have a romantic partner. Perhaps you have some close friends, some family members, some coworkers who you interact with. Even things like having a conversation with a barista at a coffee shop or a bus driver. There's a lot of variety in the interaction. That's actually really uniquely beneficial. This is a great question, and I get this a lot. And at least in North America, we have different guidelines for other parts of our health. So for example, there's this notion that you should walk 10,000 steps a day, or get 8 hours of sleep at night, or drink a certain amount of water. We kind of have these other guidelines for different parts of our health. And so I've found that people really want a guideline like that for connection. Exactly your question of, how many friends should I have, or how much interaction should I have? The data, gives us a starting point for this. And so based on and inspired by the data, I came up with what I call the 5-3-1 guideline. So the goal here is to aim to interact with 5 different people each week, to keep at least 3 close relationships, and to spend 1 hour total each day connecting. Now, what's important here to understand is that this is a guideline. What's right for you personally might be higher or lower based on your style, right? If you're a butterfly or an evergreen, you might benefit from having more than that. If you're a firefly or a wallflower, you might benefit from having less than that. So that's a kind of a starting point for people to experiment, and then to really discover what feels right and what feels enriching and valuable for you personally.
Some people, or many people, think that they're very shy, or they lack confidence in their communication skill. So is this possible to enjoy the healthy connection even they're shy or they have poor communication skill?
Absolutely, yes. There are a couple things I think that are really helpful to think about in this instance. The first is that the research shows that people actually like us more than we think. So if you're someone who's shy, and perhaps you feel a little bit insecure in those social interactions, you can feel more confident knowing that chances are people like you more than you realize, and actually you come across more positively than you realize. The other thing to keep in mind here is that we can learn communication skills. We can learn social skills, right? These aren't things that are fixed, that we learn once and then there's no hope going forward. We can all learn to be better at connecting. And one of the analogies that I use in the book is this idea of strengthening our social muscles, right? So if you think about strengthening your physical muscles by going to the gym or working out, we can do the same with our social muscles and actually strengthen them over time. Through practice, through experimentation, through challenging ourselves. And so I invite anyone who may resonate with what you said to explore more and to feel a little bit more empowered and confident, knowing that chances are people are going to like you more than you think, and that with time and effort, you can absolutely develop those skills further. And my hope is that in the future, it becomes the norm to teach social health, just like we teach gym class. I don't know about in Japan, but in North America, it's mandatory that kids have time where they exercise their bodies and do sports and physical activity. I believe that we need to get to the point where that's a mandatory part of our education. We teach social health. We help people learn, how do you be a good friend? How do you make a new friend? How do you have a difficult conversation? How do you resolve conflict? All of those kinds of skills are things that we need to be effective humans, but also that fuel our physical, mental, social health and happiness. Sure, where to start? There are so many. Well, the first I think is really to be intentional about making connection a priority for you. Right? And so this is more about a mindset shift of saying, my social health matters, and I'm going to take steps to make sure that it's part of my day-to-day. That could be starting with that 5-3-1 guideline and saying I'm going to practice that for 1 month and see how it feels and try new things and experiment a bit, but really being intentional. Another way to do this is to write what I call a to-love list. So in North America, we talk about to-do lists where we write down all the things we have to do. I don't know if it's the same in Japan. But this is about writing a to-love list. So who are the people who are most important to you? And it could be a very small list. It could be a long list. The length actually isn't what's important. What's important is being intentional about thinking about those people and then reaching out, connecting with them on a regular basis. And so by writing it down and really thinking about it and being systematic in that way, that can be a helpful way to get going.
I really agree with the part where you wrote in this book. In order to create a relationship, it is important to show your own weakness and the pain. Why it is good to show your own weakness and pain?
Yeah. So there's a lot of research in psychology showing that this idea of self-disclosure is what we call it. So this idea of opening up about something that you're going through, about something that you're experiencing, revealing a little bit more about yourself. And it could be a lot or it could be a little. But when you engage in self-disclosure, what that does is it actually invites deeper connection with the other person. It engenders a sense of trust. It makes them like you more. It makes you like them more, right? It creates this kind of reciprocal opportunity for that relationship to go deeper. And so what this means is that being a little bit vulnerable, of course, in the right context with people who you trust, but opening up a little bit can be really, really key to deepening your relationships and improving your social health. And that can be hard, right? That can be daunting. It's something that I've personally had to learn over time and get better at. I mean, when I was younger, I was very, very reluctant to open up about the challenges that I was going through, even with my close friends. But through practice over the years, I've gotten better at it and also seen how much more meaningful friendships are when you do go a little bit deeper, when you do allow yourself to be vulnerable and allow other people to be vulnerable with you. Well, I've always been fascinated by people, by what motivates us, by why we feel and think and do the things that we do. And I'm someone who, growing up, was trying to understand how to connect more meaningfully myself as an introvert, as someone who's moved around to a lot of different places and had to start from scratch and make new friends and build new community numerous times. And so when I first came across some of the data showing that our social lives impact how long we live, I was absolutely fascinated. And I wanted to really start applying those research insights and spreading them, helping people understand, here's what the data says, and here's how you can use it in your life to be more meaningfully connected. And so that's been the long journey that I've been on ever since.
Right. You found a document that's came out 90, 60, 70, I forgot.
70s, yes.
And that kind of wakes you up,
That's right. Yeah. I found this research paper in the literature that described this concept of social health. And this was not a term that I had ever heard of. This was over 10, close to 15 years ago. And I thought, that's really interesting. That really makes a lot of sense. Why can't I find information about social health? I know all about physical health. I hear constantly about mental health, especially increasingly in the last decade or two. It's very common to, at least in North America, to talk about mental health, to have programs to support it. But I'd never heard of social health. And I thought, this was a really powerful concept and one that needed to be developed further and to be made useful to people. And what I've seen over the course of doing this work is that this language is becoming more and more common. And what I believe we'll see in future years is that just like mental health has risen up in prominence and become language that's very common to use, social health is on that same trajectory. And I think it's really important that we redefine our health as physical, mental, and social, and put more weight into the importance of our relationships.